everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by Speedstream. I'm Jim Cardle. He's chairman of the House Judiciary Committee in the U.S. Congress, former Bexar County Commissioner, and frequent guest here on our Insider TV station, Congressman Lamar Smith. Thanks for joining us again.
Jim, always good to be with you and your viewers.
We've got a couple issues that have been hot and heavy of late. Congress active here before the summer comes on. But I want to ask you particularly, if we can, about some Judiciary Committee issues.
Sure. We have been busy and, as you know, fast and furious about a number of issues.
Well, last time you were in a couple weeks ago, it was after you had attended the Supreme Court hearing for Obamacare's oral arguments. It's still on the minds of people. It's still awaiting confirmation here in June, a month away. Tell us, if you would, what the latest is. And I know there's been some concerns about the Justice Department and Elena Kagan, a Supreme Court justice.
Exactly. The latest is, you're right, they had 3 days of oral arguments. I happened to be there on Wednesday, the third day. And it seemed to me that there were a lot of questions by a majority of the justices about whether the health care bill was constitutional or not. So frankly, between us, I am hoping that the judges will find that at least the mandate, first time in history, a mandate where the federal government is telling the American people what to do, which is to buy a certain kind of health care policy. I'm hoping that that will be ruled unconstitutional. We'll know in June when the Supreme Court decides.
Okay.
My real concern here is that I have tried repeatedly over many months to try to find out how involved Justice Kagan, who was a former Solicitor General under President Obama, was involved with the health care debate and with the development of the health care bill itself. Because as Solicitor General, it was her job to advise the president whether it was constitutional or not, advise the president whether he should go forward with it or not. And if she was so involved, then she should think seriously about recusing herself. Right now, the Department of Justice refuses to let us talk to her two former assistants and refuses to give us emails that might show whether or not she was involved with the development of the health care bill. That, to me, makes me very suspicious that they are trying to hide themselves, or why wouldn't they be more forthcoming? Why wouldn't they let us talk to her assistant or see some of those emails? So I have very serious doubts about whether she should be hearing this case or deciding this case or taking a vote on this case. So I am hoping that she'll still consider recusing herself if she was involved as Solicitor General.
So again, we're talking about Elena Kagan, a Supreme Court justice, and there's been a number of issues that have come out in regards to the Justice Department. The Justice Department, frankly, has over the years been a bit of a lightning rod. George W. Bush's Attorney General, Alberto Gonzales, ended up resigning. But tell us, comparatively, you've been in Congress quite a while. You're chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. How does this Justice Department and some of these concerns compared to others for you, Congressman?
Jim, I have a particular interest in the Department of Justice for a couple of reasons. As you say, I'm chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We have jurisdiction over the Department of Justice. We're supposed to conduct oversight hearings over the Department of Justice. And if there is one agency, if there's one department in the federal government that should be nonpartisan, that shouldn't be trying to impose the president's agenda on the American people, it's the Department of Justice. Their motto should be equal justice under law, same as the Supreme Court. But unfortunately, with this Department of Justice, it seems to me it's been more political than any other Department of Justice I've seen while I've been in Congress, or even while I've been watching Congress. And that is a real disappointment when you have the administration picking and choosing which laws to enforce, making decisions that seem to be based entirely on politics, not on what's right or wrong, not on what the law says, not on what is equal justice for everybody. So I'm very disappointed with this Department of Justice.
Change gears if we can real quick. Again, we're visiting with Congressman Lamar Smith from the 21st Congressional District and chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. In regards to the Justice Department, you have been working with them or attempting to get information about criminal illegal aliens. We've talked before about the Fast and Furious, which I want to stay away from if we can, but talk about the illegal criminal investigation type thing. Are there deportations on the increase? How is that being handled from your perspective?
Another subject that concerns me greatly is this administration's policy when it comes to not detaining illegal immigrants who are thought to have committed crimes or in fact may have committed crimes. And this administration is refusing to detain or releasing hundreds of thousands of people.
It's not a small number.
That is not a small number, and it is my suspicion that a lot of these individuals go on and commit other crimes. This administration has refused to provide me with that information, so we did have to issue a subpoena to try to get this information, and we did get the information. It took us months and months and months for them to give it to us, and we are now going through that information, going through that data to try to find out how many additional crimes these individuals committed. And yet there are other cities, for example, that deem themselves to be sanctuary cities that absolutely refuse to enforce any immigration law whatsoever, and the administration is taking no action against them. So they've got it exactly backwards in my judgment.
Seems to be a bit of selective judgment or implementation there.
Yeah.
So, and just to clarify, when you're talking about criminal illegal immigrants, there are various levels of crimes. There's
Correct.
felonies, misdemeanors. We're not talking about just folks who have traffic tickets or writing hot checks. You're talking about hard criminals, correct?
Well, we're talking about all kinds. We don't know what crimes they may or may not have committed. We know that they've either been apprehended or arrested, and they haven't necessarily been convicted of these crimes. They've been arrested for these crimes. And
Okay.
some of them are serious, and therefore, in my judgment, they should not be returned to our communities. They ought to either be detained or sent home.
Okay, Texas Voter ID law. It also has been subject of the Justice Department focus. Texas legislators passed it overwhelmingly,
Yes.
largely sponsored by Hispanics from South Texas who were sick and tired of their constituents not having faith in our voting system.
Right.
The law was based on an Indiana already Supreme Court approved similar piece of legislation. What do we to look for here? What can you tell us on that background?
You're right. This is another example of, in my view, where the administration is disregarding the Constitution, because there's a 10th Amendment that says we need to respect states' rights. And in this case, as you just pointed out, the Texas legislature overwhelmingly passed this voter ID bill that says you have to show some kind of ID when you go vote to prove that you are who you say you are. Nothing could be more fundamental to a democracy than free and fair elections without any kind of fraud involved whatsoever. And Indiana had a very similar law. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional. So you have to ask yourself, why is the administration filing a lawsuit against Texas for a law that the Supreme Court has already ruled is constitutional? And either they're trying to harass Texas, or they're trying to there does seem to be that anti-Texas animosity within the administration. So is it anti-Texas? Are they trying to interfere with our elections here at home? But again, this is a clear example of the administration sort of disregarding the Constitution, disregarding states' rights, and seeming to operate out of a partisan agenda. I have no other explanation for why they would file suit against Texas about a law that's already been ruled constitutional.
Well, you've got a lot of issues on your plate up there. Let's close, if I can. I want to mention you're the recipient of the U.S. Chamber's Free Enterprise Award. You, a month ago, had a jobs fair. How did the jobs fair go? It's real constituent service.
Oh, I love having job fairs. We did have one in Austin just a few weeks ago. We had almost 60 employers there looking for anywhere from 1 to 16 employees. And I had a heartfelt handwritten note from a young man just this last week saying he had followed up on leads. He had gotten an interview. It looked like he was going to get the job, and thanked me for putting on the job fair. And it was a good reminder, because he was pretty candid. He said, "I didn't think you Republicans cared about us who didn't have jobs, and now I know better and know different." And he thanked me, and I wrote him a note back, and hoping to hear back from him that all is well and you got that job.
Well, excellent effort there.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in, Congressman Lamar Smith from the 21st Congressional District, Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. We want to have you back. Appreciate your coming by. Folks, be sure to tune in for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by SpeedStream. I'm Jim Cardle, and remember, you're either an insider or you're not. Thanks.